Good evening. This is a meeting of the Princeton Planning Board. It's Thursday, July 11th, 2019. And the opening statement is as follows. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given by prominently posting the 2019 agenda resolution of the regularly scheduled meetings of the Princeton Planning Board. Such notice has been placed on the official bulletin board at the Princeton Municipal Complex and is to be maintained throughout the year by transmitting a copy of such schedule to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, Times, Trentonian, and Comcast Media. A copy has been filed with the Clerk of Princeton on the 7th day of December 2018. Legal notice on the adoption of said resolution appeared in the December 14, 2018 edition of the Princeton Packet. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Capizzoli, Mr. Cohn, Mr. Oakman, Mr. Quinn,
Here.
Ms. Sachs, Mr. Stankiewicz,
Here.
Mr. Texarney,
Here.
Ms. Wilson,
Here.
Mrs. Gunning,
Here.
Mr. McGowan,
Here.
Ms. Balla. We have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't think that we have any announcements for this meeting, but we do have a number of sets of minutes. The staff has been working very hard to catch up on things. So why don't we take these, and if you have additions or corrections or something, either you can give them to the office or you can state them right now. So the first set is the regular meeting of May 17th, 2018. Additions, corrections, anything? Anyone? All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, excuse me, Madam Chair. I thought you were going to say the first one was April, which I didn't have any suggested edits to, but I have given to Mr. LaPlace copies of the minutes from May, June, and September, with suggested just grammatical corrections, and there was a series of things that I didn't think it was worthwhile to go through
At the meeting.
at the meeting and take that time, but so I am happy to adopt those with the understanding that they'll be edited or, you know, fixed up grammatically and whatnot.
That's correct. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Staff will take care of those minor corrections for the 3 months of minutes that you just
Okay.
mentioned. They're listed as, I believe, B, C, and D. Is that correct? Yes.
That's correct, yes.
Yes, on the
So
agenda.
those three had non-substantive corrections. The one that was all right was April 19th.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, would you like to move all four of those at once?
I will do so. So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Now, we have one set of findings of fact. This is from May of this year. It was a minor subdivision on Wynant Road. Any additions, corrections? Anyone? No one? The only one I found initially was that on the first page, it's Wynant Road, not Winnat Road, but anything else? All right, if there are no corrections, would someone like to move approval of those?
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And that brings us to the hearing for this evening. And I am going to ask Ms. Bailey if she'll tell us what's happening with that.
Sure. So this is the application from Mr. Jared Michaelesco at 140 Hodge Road. I don't have the number in front of me. That's PB 1919-718MS. I'm advised that notice was proper and the board does have jurisdiction. That said, there have been a number of objections to this application that have been communicated to the board in various ways. 2 letters were received from interested parties, and I'm going to note those for the record. The first of those was dated July 10th, and that was addressed to Ms. Catronio and the members of the planning board. And this came from Mr. Jeffrey Brennan, who is representing an interested party, John Wachter, who I understand is a neighbor, although it's not specified in his letter what his address is. And the second letter, dated today, July 11th, also from an attorney, Larry Wohl, who is representing Patrick McGonigal, who resides at 129 Hodge Road in Princeton, is also a neighbor of the applicant. The basis for both of these objections is essentially the same, and that is that these interested parties claim not to have received the notice in time and haven't had enough time to prepare and to retain experts, which is presumably their intent. Now, in a situation like this, where notice was proper, because it was given in advance by 10 days of the meeting, and the board does have jurisdiction, the board nevertheless has discretion to grant requests for adjournment when it's deemed fair. And in general, when there's a public interest and when there's been enough opposition, and in this case, 2 interested parties who have requested the adjournment in order to better prepare for presenting their objections to the board. The board has every right to consider that and grant the adjournment, even though notice was proper. And so I'm not here to speak for the board. That's the decision the board has to make. But the public has a right to be heard, and given the circumstances, my recommendation to the board would be to grant the requests for adjournment. I have communicated with both of these parties through their counsel. And I've also communicated with counsel for the applicant, who I understand is not present this evening. I don't think Mr. Tarr is here, but is anyone from the applicant present, or a representative of the applicant present this evening who would maybe like to make a comment? That's okay. Mr. Tarr, who is representing the applicant, Mr. Michael Lasko, communicated to me earlier today that his client is consenting to the request for an adjournment. And the soonest date, I understand that can be rescheduled, would be October 3rd. And so, which is a regular meeting of the planning board, and the soonest available date that this matter can be rescheduled. And so I leave it to the board to consider the matter, but as I said, I'm recommending that in the interest of fairness and in the circumstances, given the objections to this application, it would be prudent to adjourn the matter at this point.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Anyone?
Well, my only question would be, are there any time constraints involved in this, putting it off? That would be the only issue that I would have with that.
Yes, there are. Thank you. And the expiration on this application is in fact October 4th, which is the next day. So you're right. So the implications of that is we're still within the time frame, and so the board can decide to grant the adjournment request without the consent of the applicant. If we were outside of that time frame, the applicant would have to consent and could deny the request, in which case you'd have a different decision to make, either denying the request, in which case the matter could be brought back. But that's not the situation here. It's possible that, given the interest in this application, if it's not completed on the 3rd, we would need to extend at that point. But I think we can
Which
address
is not,
that.
which is not a problem necessarily.
It's not for purposes of today's hearing, it's not a problem. I mean, that's a decision that we'll address, and I presumably the applicant
Okay.
will have to consent to that
Okay.
at the time.
So the applicant has no objection to,
Correct. I mean, he wasn't happy about it, but he's agreed.
Could I ask what the nature of the objections articulated in the letter were? Were they about noticing? Were they just don't think is it a neighborhood character issue? Or will the board be able to receive this correspondence before I see Eileen nodding?
Yes, yeah, we can forward these. If
So
they haven't, if they
you
haven't
don't
already
need
been.
to, did it involve noticing, or is it to the
it-
subdivision itself?
So in both cases, they have said they haven't had enough time because they only received the notice of the application last week. In the case of Mr. Wachter, they haven't had enough time to prepare and to retain experts, which I think means that in both of these instances, the plan will be to bring experts to provide some sort of testimony.
I have no objections. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. Thank you.
All right, then I think what we'd like to have is a motion to approve the decision to postpone this until October.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Do you want to just call the roll on that so we're all sure about it?
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Sacks?
yes.
Mr. Stankiewicz?
Yes.
Mr. Texarney? Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Gunning?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right, and with that, that concludes the business for this evening, and one of you will have to make a motion to adjourn.
Since David is not here, I move we adjourn.
And who's going to second it? All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And